Hello everyone, welcome to our first episode of Pilot Talk. Today we are going to be here with Adam, who is currently a private pilot student working on his first license. Adam, if you want to kind of tell everybody about yourself and what led you here.
Well, so I'm from Bennett, Colorado, little map dot, middle of Colorado.
Beautiful part of Colorado.
And I came down here to Oklahoma about 3 years ago, joined the Army, and just ended up falling in love with flying and not expecting it at all.
It's an addiction that sneaks up on you pretty quick.
It really is.
Well, I'll tell you what, now that we kind of led into that, we'll go ahead and just kind of brought you to what brought us here today. And so what made you want to get into flight training in the first place? What was the thing that kicked off the whole addiction of wanting to get into it to the point where you're buying the airplane that's sitting in front of us right now?
Well, so what actually happened is it's about a 10-hour drive home. So my brother had come down to visit, and we got to talking like it'd be so much easier if we just flew. We laughed about it, and
if you got time to spare, go by air.
Yeah. So as he was driving home, he calls me. He's like, "Well, why don't we?" So that kind of got the thinking off. And
so essentially you started private pilot training on the basis of you planning on buying a plane in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll tell you, a lot of what goes on in flight training, and if you look on the internet or you go to start buying a plane, there's a lot of information out there about the pre-buy, about where to do your flight training, the ground schools and everything. Did you ever run into anything before you started that kind of made you worry about it? Any negative connotations that you kind of had going into flight training? Any bad expectations?
Not really any bad expectations, just the knowledge that yes, this is going to be a pricey endeavor.
Yes.
But more so getting past the only special people can fly. Like you have to be in a certain bracket or certain kind of person to even be allowed to do this.
Right, right. Yeah, and for anybody out there watching, this is something that can easily be learned. It is a process. It is costly. You will have to invest time. You definitely have to be willing to buckle down and really put in the effort to be able to study not just the ground stuff, but stay consistent in the aircraft. Most flight schools will let you pay as you go, but it's always better to kind of have money set aside so you can stay consistent throughout the flight training. I'm glad to hear that you really didn't have just any kind of crazy, like, I can't do this right off the bat, because everybody can. Did you have any like fears when it came to the actual flying part, like doing stalls or accidentally putting yourself into a spin, because you were in a 172 for a long time, which can have the tendency to get away from you when you're first learning power offs and power on stalls. Did you kind of have any fears going into it, or were you just kind of?
So going into it, I was really worried about landing.
Yep.
I was really worried about that. But
and this man still gets a little nervous sometimes, even till this day. There's always time where we all kind of get a little glad that's over with, even as you're this far along, Well, besides landings, what else?
Eventually it turned into the slips. Those they just give a weird gut feeling.
Okay.
And that's definitely something I need to work on more.
Yeah.
To be able to do.
Yeah. So just a lot of crosswind stuff.
Oh yeah.
A lot of crosswind stuff.
So much crosswind.
Well, we've talked about the stuff that led up to it and the bad things that you were kind of expecting and the fears. What has been like your favorite thing about it so far?
So honestly, my favorite thing has definitely been being able to go pretty much anywhere. Like anywhere that there's a strip, you can go. And you're not going hub to hub, like not going Oklahoma City to Denver. It's everything in between.
So no TSA.
None.
No
it's
TSA.
Beautiful.
It's kind of funny how you were mentioning, just being able to go wherever. We actually had an issue with his flight, or his training plane, not too long ago. And we were sitting in Chickasha, Oklahoma 1 minute, and then next morning we were on a plane to Denver to go pick up the Mooney that's sitting behind y'all, that y'all will see in another video coming up pretty soon when we go up and do some flight training. But yeah, that just kind of speaks to the whole point of you just never know where you're going to end up.
You really don't.
On a day-to-day. You'll wake up planning on maybe doing an hour flight and then going home and grabbing some lunch, and the next thing you know, you're packing a bag because you're flying somewhere to go do something else. What are your goals as far as timeline to get all your ratings done? You're obviously going to be going straight into instrument after this, and we do have a check ride coming up very soon for your private pilot. Like what kind of timeline do you want to try to stick to have everywhere where you're settled and happy with where you're at training? So
I'm actually hoping to get up to my commercial and start working on my multi-engine within probably the next 2 years.
Next 2 years?
Yeah.
Okay, and how much longer do you have here in Oklahoma before you move on?
So I'm gonna be here in Oklahoma until December.
December. So guys, if anybody here's from Oklahoma and y'all want to split some hood time in a Mooney, this guy right here needs a whole bunch of hood time for his instrument. So if you want anything, reach out, leave a comment down there, and I'll hook y'all up and y'all can go split some hood time. What challenges were you faced with flight training so far? And what I mean by this is, did you have any part where you really struggled? Was scheduling an issue? Was finding the time to go out and be able to put a lot of work into this? Was there any areas up to where you are now that really just kind of stood out as something that these people might want to kind of think about before they try to dive into flight training?
Honestly, the biggest thing that I struggled getting motivation to do was definitely the ground school.
Ground school.
Because it's fun going to the airport, getting in the plane.
It is.
And going after it.
But you do have to admit, it's more fun already knowing ahead of time what you're expecting than just to show up. I don't know if any of you out there are in the middle of flight training or not, but when you hear something from your flight instructor as you're in the middle of being thrown around with turbulence and wind, it's kind of hard to retain that information if that's the first time you hear it. But if you get ahead on ground school, you can kind of keep pace and already have what you're fixing to do kind of already in your head, and then go out and actually apply it in the airplane, which is what you've pretty much done for the most part. And I think that's made it pretty smooth for you.
It really has.
Yeah. It's just kind of the motivation to to go home after a long day and go through it. Yep, I understand. Looking back to where you are now, and you're not quite wrapped up, but you're getting pretty close to your private pilot's license. If you were to go back and try to do anything differently, if we have anybody out there right now listening that might be getting ready for check ride prep, they might be kind of getting worried about the oral, getting worried about the practical, and looking back like, man, I wish I would have spent more time doing this or paying more attention to this. Do you have anything that kind of comes to mind on what you would have done differently if you had the opportunity now?
Honestly, probably one of the number one things is I would have settled on my instructor a lot quicker, because I went through I rode with 2 or 3 other instructors before I finally ended up with you. And once I made that decision that you're going to be my instructor, the training went so much smoother and so much faster.
And that's kind of another point that I'm actually glad that you brought up too, because there is a saying among flight instructors, and when you go through your CFI training, there might be a perfect instructor for you that click in the cockpit, that make everything run smooth, but there is no flight instructor perfect for everybody. And I was honestly the same way when I was going through my private pilot. I think I had like 4 or 5 different ones. And there have come times to where they would even move on to the airline, or me and them just didn't mesh very well in the cockpit. And sometimes you have to fire your flight instructor. And that's perfectly okay. If anybody out there right now is struggling getting through and moving at your own pace, and you're not clicking well with your flight instructor, by all means, find someone. You only get this education once, and it's a lot of money to invest in somebody that you might not take any good information away at the end of the day. And so don't be scared to fire a flight instructor. Find someone that you mesh with really well. Find someone that can relay the information that you need, how you need, and what's best for you. And again, that's not everybody. Everybody's not going to mesh well with everybody else. And you know, you made the right choice as far as sampling before you made the leap to continue on. What type of advice as a student pilot would you give to other people who are thinking about taking the leap, going for their first intro flight, looking into a ground school? From where you are now, what you've learned, what type of advice would you give anybody?
Honestly, do the discovery flight. Even if you're not sure if you're going to go to that particular flight school, do the discovery flight and make sure that the flying is for you.
Yep.
Because, like we said, it's very expensive, and it doesn't get any cheaper, unfortunately. But do the discovery flight, find a school that you like, and just go for it. Like, the biggest thing is you're gonna have that gut feeling, don't go for it, and just do it. You have to.
Take the leap.
Take the leap.
I kind of feel like I was almost there at one point too, because, you know, the discovery flight's the cheap part. That's like the cheapest hour you get with a flight instructor is that discovery flight. And then you start looking at ground school, and there's some really cheap ground schools out there, you know, Kings and Sporties, M0A, Jason Shepard, they all have decently cheap ground schools that you can go in and ask questions. But then it comes time to start logging time in the plane, and you fly what seems like 4 or 5 hours on your first day, and then at the end of your discovery flight you get a 0.08 or a 0.8. And that 40 can look like it's a long way if you're on pace to pass at 40. And as you can attest, it doesn't always work out to where you can just check right at 40 hours.
Yes.
The average is quite a bit longer. So I will attest to that advice. If you're on the fence, go out, do your discovery flight, and just dive in. It only gets more fun the more comprehensive knowledge you have of what's going on around you, the more muscle memory you get. It kind of all becomes second nature, and you get to start enjoying the airplane, other than being like real tense and white knuckle the yoke and be worried about your every move. And I think that's honestly the perfect advice. It's simple, straight to the point. Well, I will kind of give you a chance to kind of wrap up the questions with a funny story. What's like the best moment you've had? What's the funniest thing that's happened to you since we've been up in the airplane? And we'll let y'all.
So honestly, the best story that has happened is bringing the Mooney back from Colorado. We got caught up in some storm and had to land in this little tiny airstrip, middle of Kansas. I think it was Kansas, wasn't it?
It was Kansas, yeah, I believe so.
And just they were following the signs to find the FBO because it looked exactly like all the other buildings.
Which were, I believe, single wides and double wide trailers, actually.
Yeah, they were, and one old Quonset hut.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a neat use, and then a very clingy.
He had
manager.
not seen anybody in a while. Yeah.
Pretty sure we were the most interesting thing that happened that month.
Yeah, we actually were going to, we got hit with a squall on, I think, 45, 50 knot gust out of nowhere when we were just, it was really nice and smooth, and all of a sudden it just kind of came in around us. And we went to go land, and we were going to go grab some lunch. And the FBO attendant was giving us walking directions, like if you go to this tree and turn left, and then walk to the next bar ditch and turn right, you'll get to a little shack that looks like a restaurant. We were like, that's going to be another 4 miles of walking we're not planning on doing. So we ended up waiting for the break, and then we brought it on back to Oklahoma City. Adam, anything that has not been said, anything that you want to add, anything that you want to tell people that might be looking to getting into flight instruction or a career in aviation, if they're wanting to not do your normal office job, if they're wanting to get out and start a career, and it is a long road, anything that you just kind of want to close with?
Honestly, if you're thinking about doing this, getting up in a plane, whether for pleasure or you want to try to find a job in it, just do it. And stay motivated. It doesn't matter if you get it done in 4 months or 4 years, you can do it. There's no time limit.
Progress is progress, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Your logbook doesn't go away unless you lose it, and you know, your hours stay forever. You know, just yeah. I mean, I completely agree with that. Adam, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
I hope we do. Honestly, I hope we get to do this again soon as you start to progress. For anyone watching that has any comment on any type of questions or information that you might want to know from the people that we interview, make sure you drop a comment down there. We're going to be pretty interactive in the comment section, and we will try to incorporate some of those questions and information into our future videos. As a matter of fact, for future videos, don't forget to smash that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of the ones that are coming up. For everyone here at Pixels and Planes, my name is Ryan, reminding you to get out and fly today, and we'll see y'all next time.